Hello, listeners. It's Mallory Wilsey, Chief Producer of the Enrollify Network, and I want to tell you about another show on our podcast network that I think you'll love. Visionary Voices, the College President's Playbook, is an insightful podcast dedicated to the strategic minds leading today's higher ed institutions. Each episode brings a unique perspective from visionary and tech-forward college presidents, chancellors, and other high-level academic leaders, diving into the complexities and nuances of running a modern educational institution. This show is hosted by Dr. Brian Gross, Vice President for Enrollment Management and Athletics at Hartwick College, and is a valuable resource for current and aspiring leaders in academia, offering a playbook of visionary ideas and practical solutions for the ever-evolving landscape of higher ed. New episodes drop every other Wednesday, and you can subscribe to the show by visiting podcast.enrollify.org or just search Visionary Voices wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome to the Generation AI podcast. This is me, JC, and I'm kicking off. And this is the podcast where we demystify artificial intelligence in the world of higher education. I am your co-host, JC Bonilla, doing the intro for the first time, joined by the amazing, incredible, and only one, Artis Kadui. What's up, Artis?
Hey, JC. Well, that was great. I think you should take that introduction out.
You're fired. You're fired. I'm going to be doing this every day.
That's it. I'm doing great. I just got back from a few days away, and the AI world has moved very, very quickly. So we have a lot to talk about today. We're going to have a news episode. So we're going to talk about all the big players. We're going to try to see if we can come up with some angles on how this kind of trickles down to us mere consumers and higher education specifically. But we're very excited about this. There's a lot happening over the past week and a half in the AI world, and we wanted to catch everybody up.
Yeah, there's no doubt that the AI world just moves fast. But there's a correlation between artists and my time as we take time off. And this chess game of AI just basically continues to accelerate while we're off. Because to your point, Artis, my gosh, it really felt like the past week, 3 chess moves, like big ones, like, oh my gosh, what's happening here? Many other players in the tech sector, they are playing checkers. This was a chess week, in my opinion. So we are sorting news in 3 basic categories. The first one is there's a lot that has happened on the closed source systems. There is some interesting, very, very interesting development on the open source systems. And of course, all these things need to be powered with infrastructure. And we have an interesting update as it relates to infrastructure. So, Artis, you want to kick us off with what Apple did that has created a lot of what in the closed source, closed loop systems for LLMs in OpenAI?
Yeah, I think this is one of the news items that probably affects a lot of us day to day. A lot of us are iPhone users and we live in the Apple ecosystem. And Apple has been traditionally quiet on the AI or generative AI, on the LLM ecosystem. Exactly. They did buy a company a couple of weeks ago, an AI company. But one of the things that made news was Apple and Google are partnering up so Apple can use their Gemini models in their devices. Very similar to how Apple and Google are partners on search. So most of your Safari searches, most of your iPhone searches run through Google as the backend. Now they're partnering up around large language models. What this can mean is a number of different things. Apple has been notoriously forward in wanting these technologies to be localized to the devices. And right now, Google with Gemini is probably one of the leading research companies that has these smaller models that can fit in devices. So they're probably one of the most advanced ones right now with Gemini. And I wouldn't be surprised if they're continuing their relationship now in the same way that they're doing their search as well. Of course, Apple is getting sued by the US government for antitrust. So that's going to be unfolding over the next few weeks as we know more about it. And it could affect this as well.
And it could affect this. Look, artists, I want to go into a bit of speculation mode because I think this is such a chess like move that is so interesting.
Maybe it's a go move.
Yeah, this is a go move. That's the right one. First of all, the partnership is being reported as a licensing type of agreement, indicating that, and this is where I'm going to go into speculation mode, Google is going to be paying billions of dollars to Apple so they can basically move their technology into an iPhone package, probably search. I'm speculating here. What a great move. Think about it. I need to develop all these AI capabilities, but I have a native technology, my iPhone, right? So all of a sudden I want to say like, hey, you want to basically bring your technology here and play with my consumers and my infrastructure, aka the device. So all of a sudden, Apple, of course, says yes. And if this happens, let me give you an example where my head is going, artist. You just took vacation, right? You probably went to restaurants and places. How do you navigate? Do you navigate on your phone?
I do, yeah, exactly.
What navigation app do you use?
Google Maps.
Google Maps. Apple has its own thing. So that's the play, right? That they've been developing this technology and it's inherently, there's an app version of it, but many of us tend to go into the search capability that Google provides. And as far as I understand, there's that type of agreement here. So what a great move. Good job for Tim Cook and the Apple executives, because this is just going to be bottom line, pure cash, volcano type of thing. So very, very gangster move, if you will.
Yeah. Well, we don't know if this is final yet. So they're still in discussions, advanced discussions, obviously. Sure, Apple is exploring OpenAI and other providers as well, but it makes a lot of sense that Google would be the provider given their advanced small language models that they're developing with Gemini and the desire for Apple to be on device and the privacy. The privacy is really important here.
I was going to ask you that question. Assuming it goes live and it happens, what's your take? And I know this is speculation because, it could go in multiple directions, but as experts, what are we starting to think about? Apple is notoriously I don't mind your data kind of company, right? So the privacy aspect on the phones, whereas Google is notoriously the best at mining your data. And more importantly, an LLM, it's data hungry. And without that personalized level of data, these generative AI models don't demonstrate their true power and magic. So what do you think is going to happen there? How do you marry the strategic intent of privacy with the strategic intent that I need your personal data to do next level AI?
Well, the language models don't have to be connected to the internet, right? So Apple can have them on device and they can be localized. You just need them to be advanced enough and small enough and trained with the data. So once they get trained, you don't need to connect them to more data unless you're providing them data that is contextually to the questions or contextually to what you're doing, which the iPhone does really nicely because it has all that stuff localized. Think about now Siri is localized to your iPhone. The chips are fast enough so your data never leaves your iPhone. It never, even if it does, it can be encrypted but it doesn't have to leave your phone. So security then becomes really important, or privacy becomes really important. And one of the things that we talk a lot about and people are afraid is, well, I don't want to use ChatGPT for my company data or my enterprise data because it's going to go to OpenAI and they're going to use it to train other things. So now if you have models that live on your phone and your computer and they don't have to go to the internet, you don't have to send your data out there, they live next to your data, then privacy becomes very, very attainable. And that's what Apple is all about. So I really like that move. We're probably going to see a lot of these happening. And for us as consumers and even higher education, one of the things that we're seeing in higher ed is this fear of we want to build something internally because we don't want to give our data away to the larger companies, which I believe it's unfounded in a lot of cases. But in this case, it makes a lot of sense for Apple and kind of consumerization of these models. So I'm hoping to get much, much better Siri integration with the iPhone by using these models.
That's a great point, artist. And technically speaking, I think one of the beautiful things about this generation of technology, AI, and that is that they benefit from you train a global model. And it's not that it's generic. It just basically uses a ton of data. And then these techniques of reinforced learning and RNNs type of things, recurrent neural, right?
And fine tuning. Yeah, exactly.
Then it moves into your phone. It already can do magic. But then your point is that because its closed source system is not going to leak out of your device, so it remains private, it can start localizing, and it becomes JC's model versus Artis's model, but they're being fueled and powered by a gigantic investment, and it's in a way it's global. So in other words, the iPhone model gets deployed, and then it gets localized with JC's data versus Artis's data on the type of device that you have.
100%. It's like transplanting a brain, right? It's like saying, hey, we're moving from the mainframe where the brain is in the cloud somewhere and everybody is just sending stuff to that. It's like now you have your localized brain in the device itself.
Artist, random question. Is this a person who you can get his or her brain? Whose brain would you transplant onto yours for a week? Just a week, and then you're going to go back to being an artist. Huh? That's an interesting question. I never thought about that, right?
That's a tough question. Yeah.
You know where I'm at in my career? I would get the brain of an athlete because at this point, that mental fitness and kind of a whole new dimensionality on things I don't do. Anyway, so Ronaldo, Messi, you guys, can I borrow your brain? This is not news. It's just fun chat. Go artist.
If you're borrowing somebody's brain, wouldn't you want something that's completely different from your brain?
That's my point, right?
I think it would be someone even though I'm an entrepreneur, like I'm a little bit risk adverse. So it's like, it would be really interesting to have the brain of somebody who's kind of a world traveler and who's experienced a lot of different things. So I can see the world a little bit differently. Jacques Cousteau, my favorite explorer. What an interesting thing. So everybody, once we have the matrix and AI has allowed you to basically download someone's code, you'll be the first one to know from us, right? Artists, let's pivot out of Apple into its competitive cousin, Microsoft. Microsoft does a gangster move. Controversial. There's so much that it hasn't leaked in e-will, but Microsoft has literally hired, in my opinion, the best number 3 in the AI world. So let's go back to the sports analogies, right? If there's Ronaldo and there's Messi and there's, another incredible soccer player, that's the one that we went for, right? By actually having Mustafa Suleiman be their person heading up their play on AI with consumers. So basically, the way I would present this is they're asking Mustafa to run their co-pilot play. Now, that's great. They get a fantastic person. But the way they've done this is that Mustafa leaves his startup that has a $1.5 billion funding and is bringing, his crew, right? Which I think is more than one, right? And good for Microsoft. You're literally getting not only Ronaldo, now you get like the whole Manchester City. And what I think is going to happen is an acceleration of the use cases and how Copilot starts becoming a consumer preferable type of AI technology. And for everybody to remember, the company Inflection, they launched this LLM and chatbot called Pi. Right. So for those of you who don't know, Mustafa Suleiman is the founder of DeepMind, which was acquired by Google. He left Google and then formed his own company called Inflection AI. One of the biggest investors there was Reid Hoffman. Reid Hoffman is the founder of LinkedIn,
who is also in the board of Microsoft.
So he's very influential in that. And Inflection AI was building Pi, the Pi chatbot, which stands for personal intelligence. And it's actually a conversational chatbot that is more of a companion. They were touting really, really great advances and people using up to anywhere between 30 minutes to 3 hours a day talking to Pi. And it was really, really great.
Have you done that? Have you talked to Pi?
Yeah, it's incredible.
Pi is my friend.
I mean, of course, you have AI assistants and then you have AI companions. So Pi was more of that friend. But to come back around to it, Inflection has a product called Pi, very deep connections with Microsoft through Reid Hoffman, which basically orchestrated this whole deal. Where this becomes really interesting for us, or how this works, is Microsoft wanted to bring in Sam Altman and his team from OpenAI when everything was happening. Right now, their AI strategy revolves around OpenAI, or at least it did. And now they want to take ownership of that internally And this is one of the main things why the CEO of Microsoft is saying if OpenAI left or didn't exist tomorrow, Microsoft AI would still be okay and it will still pursue our mission. So this is a great move from them to essentially say, well, we couldn't get the OpenAI team, so now we're getting the number 2 team with Inflection and that whole group to come in and run Microsoft AI. So Suleiman is going to be CEO of Microsoft AI, which runs these consumer products, as you said. Now, JC, let me ask you a question around that. The way that this deal is done, it's just really interesting because it's kind of an acqui-hire, right? It's saying, okay, you're not going to be able to make it yourself. So Inflection AI, they had a lot of headwind. They didn't see themselves as being number 2 or number 3 on any of these, building great technology, but now they're like, hey, Microsoft paid a lot of money to us in order to hire and create this new organization internally. However, Inflection still exists and they're going to put their models in Microsoft's cloud. If you're in higher education and you are an Azure client, you're probably going to have access to the Pi 2.0 models. So you can build your own internal Pi chatbot that's very empathetic and can maybe customize it for your institution. But that's another side effect of this whole thing is that those models now are available in the Microsoft cloud.
For me, there's 2 points there, right? The first one is it's the point that you're signaling, right? That Copilot or Bing right now are being powered by OpenAI's underlying technology. And I'm going to use the word style of doing AI, right? The LLMs, the people, the talent has a vision and they're going for that. Everybody should listen to about 5 episodes where we've been kind of decoupling this idea of this style. But remember, it's centered around the idea that computational power and the speed and the integration of all the information is there, but also productizing chatbots and creating a marketplace. That's a style. Pi, to be super simplistic, right? It starts looking at a different style of LLMs. And in this case, the models will be available. How is it that I'm going to come and choose, I want to go the Copilot with a kind of productization marketplace. I'm going to go the GPT version versus, Pi, which really tends to gravitate towards the idea of a connection, deep connection, and using AI to start creating that behavioral relationships, which I think is very, very interesting and is slightly different. It's a fascinating play. I don't understand why, because I don't operate at the level of billions. So I don't understand how a company is going to have such a diversification on the AI technology stack. Maybe because I'm scrappy and I know how to work with $1 as opposed to $1 billion. So I would just basically double down on one as opposed to diversification. But today, Microsoft sits in the most interesting tech talent, tech infrastructure, and opportunity space. So remember that the battle of the LLMs that we had, I was going for Google. Right now with this Microsoft play, oh my gosh, I really don't know what's going to happen. It's fascinating. But the second angle, artists, you are a CEO, you have a company, you have fundraised. Imagine if I come in and tell you, artists, come here and build the generative AI creative analytics space for our company, right? And then you do come. Don't you think that everyone in Element would come back and sue or do something your investors because you literally walked away and so much of Element runs out of your head, your vision, where you are today and where you're going? That's the part that I find very interesting. So it's Inflection, the company, disappearing? Probably got bought, right?
Yeah, exactly. The Inflection of the company is disappearing in the sense that the way that they're structured the deal is through a licensing deal, but then also those models being hosted on Microsoft and Microsoft giving them a huge licensing cost. And for those models that they're licensing over the years, the investors are going to get their money back and they're going to make money on the deal anyway. So that's the way that they're seeing.
This is a masterclass on acquisitions, partnership. Really, really interesting, right?
Exactly. And what's interesting here is that the way that Microsoft did it, they did the acqui-hire. They basically brought in the talent and there is no regulatory hurdles that you have to go through for hiring people. But if you acquire, Inflection, then they would have had to go through the SEC regulations in order for anti-competitive. So this is a really interesting move in terms of how they did it. I'm not at that scale or anything like that, but this is incredible in terms of what's happening behind the scenes. So,
Artists, on the closed loop, you buy it as it gets. You have one incredible update coming up on the OpenAI front. So what is happening this summer from OpenAI?
So there's some leaks that GPT-5 is coming this summer, and it is significantly better than current versions. There's a few large enterprise clients that have had a chance to perhaps see it or play around with it, and it's a massive upgrade from GPT-4. Again, we don't have a lot of details on this one. Sam Altman was in a recent podcast, and he was talking about the capabilities of GPT-5, and he said it will be a huge, huge upgrade in terms of what he can do. It's not going to be close to AGI yet, but the advancement is going to be incredible. He did mention that between now and GPT-5, there will be a lot of other releases. So we're probably going to see a whole bunch of stuff coming out over the next couple of months. It might be GPT-5 this summer. It might be called GPT 4.5. I don't know, but definitely the next version will be coming in during the summer.
If you're listening to this and you're like me, you're like, who cares? Because there's no doubt that the investment is needed. But there's a parallel universe to Pentium, which I'm very close to, right? As an electrical engineer, my first job was in semiconductors. So I was supporting Intel and structural testing for semiconductors. So Pentium 1, Pentium 2, Pentium 3, Pentium 4, remember that? And now I'm dating myself. But the point is, with the advancement of the integer going from 4 to 5 to 6 and whatever it's going to end up with, is just the power becomes so ridiculous that the simple human brain like me, we just basically cannot keep up with it. And the fact that the context window now goes from, 1,000 to 50 gazillion million, and the computational, demands drop by 5x, like those things are, in my opinion, just wasted on my brain. It's just about the consumption of it. So I'm glad we're getting it, but I've reached the point of saturation on what I can keep up with the advancements of GPTs.
I mean, I can tell you from a software development perspective, and we're using these LLMs right now, and we're using GPT-4, which is the most advanced frontier model right now. And one of the things that we're building at Element is AI assistance. And we can do that with GPT-4, right? Because we are able to reason about, personalities. We're able to reason about doing tasks and tie a lot of these agents together for specific, how do you accomplish certain things? However, in our vision is we want autonomous assistants or autonomous agents that are basically doing things on their own. You just give them a goal and then they're doing things on their own.
That sounds scary.
It does, right?
Hey, if you're a school, you're like, where did I get this student? Like the bot just figured out that John is a good student and he just showed up. Recruited Johnny and no one knew.
He reached out to them and yeah, exactly. And no one knew. If you think about this, it's like goal oriented. It's like, hey, I want to recruit this many students. What's the best way to do that? And let the AI or let the assistant actually do the work in the background. Everything that we do, like we check statuses, we check interactions, we write emails. So we're building that, but like the reasoning and the context that we need right now in order to handle this autonomously, because it's like hundreds and thousands of different tasks that need to be handled. GPT-4 kind of loses track of some of that. Like we can't get quite there yet with GPT-4. So, we'll have prototypes of it and we'll have proofs of concepts over the next couple of months. But once GPT-5 is here with much better reasoning capabilities and much larger context windows, then it opens up the autonomous agent. And that's the way we're looking at it, right? So every time we've said, hey, we're hitting this roadblock, then OpenAI kind of gives us something. And now we're like, oh, we're hitting this roadblock. And it's like, okay, here's the next one, GPT-4. Oh, we need to run a lot of tools. Oh, here's functions. The advancements is actually amazing for product developers like us that we're using these models. And GPT-5 is going to be opening up a lot of possibilities for what we can build in there for sure. I'm excited.
Just imagine what you can do with GPT-15.
15, yeah. Well, that's going to be the Matrix.
Coming to you this fall, GPT-15. Artists, let's do a switched on the conversation of LLMs to open source. One gigantic announcement, another one kind of interesting, but going back to the Sam Altman OpenAI feud with Elon Musk, right, which we all know he's a founding force within the generative AI movement with OpenAI and whatnot. So he goes out and creates his own company called XAI, and they made a gigantic announcement 2 weeks ago. So you want to tell people what has happened on the open source LLM delivered to us by Elon Musk and XAI?
Oh man, Elon Musk he put his money where his mouth is, so to speak. And he always does that, right? So he bought Twitter just because he's like, well, I can run this better. And people called him out in it. And he's like, now I'm going to buy it. In this case, he wants OpenAI and the name to essentially
destroyed.
Well, no, I mean, I feel there's a little bit of this idea that OpenAI has veered away from its original mission of opening AI and making it available for all the society and making it open. So now they have moved into taking a lot of money. Their corporate structure is very complex. So their interests are aligned very differently. And Elon has said, well, this is not exactly, the way it started, and this was not the mission for it. So that's the feud that's going between them. And there's a lawsuit that we talked a little bit about, but people called Elon out on it and said, well, if you want OpenAI to have open source models, what's going on with Grok? So Grok is the XAI chatbot that is available in X right now. And Elon said, well, we're going to make it open source. So they called him out on it, and now Grok is available as open source, and the model is available to be used. So I guess all it takes is some calling out on Twitter or calling out somebody on X and pin the CEOs against each other.
Did you know, I don't know if I ever told you this, that prior to helping you with Element, that was a data kind, and we had an opportunity from one of our founders that said, can you have your lead of data science join this or that, where it was the Obama administration where they have their first chief data scientist. So it was called the Data Council, helping DJ Patil. So, I'm a huge fan of DJ Patil. So that's all I heard. And I'm like, yes. And then they said, and there's this other thing that we're putting money on. It's called OpenAI. And it's just basically to understand how do we democratize this new definition of ML, which is called AI.
So you had an opportunity to invest in OpenAI or work at OpenAI?
No, not invest. It was just basically the first group that was getting together to advise, because I was supporting Data for Good. So I guess Elon Musk and everyone was like, can you guys make an advisory committee just to figure out how our technology could support the kind of Data for Good movement, right? So as an expert on that part, I was asked to join, and I actually said no because, I'm a big fan of DJ Patil and the Obama administration. So absolutely. I went bowling in the White House with DJ Patil and got a little bit of a postcard from Obama. I felt I was the most important one. Fast forward 10 years, God damn it.
You should have been on the OpenAI advisory board. Yeah.
Why didn't I do the OpenAI thing? I know. Back to this Grok XAI release. Fantastic. Good for you, Elon Musk and XAI. And watch out, Meta, because this is where you're competing. You're probably dominating, given the resources. And I think it's a really interesting play to see how this competitive landscape of open source allows you to kind of move forward. And remember, everybody, when it is open source, that means that the underlying technology is free. You can grab it. But the customization, the education, the whole business model of open source, it's true. You can make $1 on it, or more, like $1 billion, but the play is slightly different. And we've seen models like Cloudera and whatnot that actually make really well on the customization of the open source. Back to Meta, there was a really interesting release on all of us who are WhatsApp users. So if you have a family abroad, probably that's how you talk to them, right? So I spent a lot of time in WhatsApp threads. And what has happened there is that they released basically an assistant, right? Which is basically probably a play of Llama, the open source version applied to WhatsApp, that allows you basically interact and search natively in the application, right? With all that OpenAI capability. So for example, right now my family is flying, and literally real use case from the past hour. They just landed in Frankfurt and they're meeting up with my nephew, and they're going to this ridiculous trip in Egypt, right? So they cannot find themselves, and there's a 4-hour gap. So as opposed to going out of WhatsApp to try to understand when the thing flies and where can I find my, I don't know, a good restaurant to meet and kill for hours, within WhatsApp, the whole experience. Can you give me a recommendation where I meet my, grandparents and kill for hours? Within app, it can give you that recommendation. So it's very, very interesting and timely play, in my opinion. Are you a WhatsApp user?
Just a little bit. We actually support WhatsApp as one of the channels in Element and are working with a couple of partners right now to onboard them to use WhatsApp through Element. I think that's a really interesting play there from an enterprise and school usage is the availability of Meta making WhatsApp platform open so we can integrate it into our other channels, just like SMS. I love the idea. It's encrypted, it's international, so you can reach out anybody in the world. So I'm hoping that it can kind of pick up steam as we start using it more and more on the Element side for sure.
Similar to what we spoke about in prior episodes, there is an LLM out of, I think, Baidu, one of the Chinese companies that is incredibly good in, of course, Mandarin. I forgot the French version. There's a lot of important movements happening in the AI world outside the US. And WhatsApp dominates abroad. I remember visiting my parents a few years ago, not last year, but maybe 3 or 4. And I need to make an appointment with the local bank. And literally the customer support was a WhatsApp thread. And I could book a time in the app, basic WhatsApp. And then that's how I got to meet them. So it basically did a bit of a chatbot concierge time calendaring thing in the app. Then the same trip, I need to buy flowers, and literally the vendor said, "Can you send me money?" And if I don't have a bank account here, it's like, can do it via WhatsApp. It has an e-commerce digital payments feature, which I didn't know. So a lot really interesting things happening in WhatsApp and many other things. And remember, the world of AI is not only confined to the amazing things that happens in the US, it's across boundaries.
Exactly. I really like that ecosystem for sure. And that's one that we're investing in for sure. Maybe Elon should have bought WhatsApp when it was available because he really wants to make the everything app, right? X is supposed to be this.
It's called the super apps, right?
You can do everything. Yeah, exactly. So that's been a vision.
Well, artists, to power these super apps, there's a gigantic announcement, in my opinion. It doesn't get the gravitas that it deserves. But in terms of infrastructure, we see something coming up, I think also this summer, that it's significant. So you want to talk about what's happening with NVIDIA.
So NVIDIA had their developer conference or whatever you want to call it, but the technology conference, NVIDIA's GPU technology conference 2024. And there was a lot of stuff that was announced. First of all, what I was impressed mostly is how you can see the stadium seating at the conference. And the CEO of NVIDIA, Jensen Huang, he's like Taylor Swift. He's like a celebrity. So I've never seen so many people packed in a huge stadium listening to these announcements. So I want to put that aside. But
artists, can I just make a pivot there? One of the interesting things as technologists is that the innovator has messianic, godlike type of features, right? So if you are a CEO, who has your shit together, we are looked at in a different pedestal. So I recommend everybody to read Kara Swisher's book, The Burn Book, because it gives you this timeline of how we nerds became gods. And because we were just nerds, right? And it goes back to the Netflix, AOL timeline. So kind of 1990s. Anyway, so Jensen won, godlike in the stadium, opened his arms and everyone's like, yes. All right, take it from there.
So they announced on Monday they announced a whole bunch of new things, right? They announced a new generation of AI chips and software for running AI models. So they're moving to an ecosystem play right now. So they're building more and more. One of the chips that they announced, or the processors, or the platform rather, is called Blackwell GPU series. They're described as the world's most powerful chip for AI workloads. It's expected to be 30 times more efficient than its predecessor, right? And it runs really large language models. And it's much, much more advanced than the H100s or anyways, we're kind of geeking out right now a little bit in this.
Oh, I mean, the amount of transistors that you're able to pack on that density is in the billions, right? And, this is where now you are working what is called nanoscales. And it's incredible what you can do and pack in some of these infrastructure, right? It's good old silicon, but it just basically the technology keeps on advancing. The part that I want everybody to remember is that without NVIDIA's infrastructure and advancements on chips, there would be no generative AI today. Let me repeat that. Without Jensen Huang, godlike stadium, doing his magic, we would not be having the conversation we're having today. This podcast wouldn't have existed, right? Because the amount of power to consume, all Shakespeare's books in a nanosecond and learn them and reproduce a semantic map of how William Shakespeare speaks, so I can then say something in JC style with a Shakespearean twist. That is a nanosecond probably. That is all powered in a way by this type of technology. So the fact that they just keep on, bringing these GPUs and making them better, it's amazing. So Chat GPT-5 or 15, going back to the announcement, probably needs these unlocks, and probably that's why announcements like this are welcome in such a way, because we know that software needs infrastructure to not only work, but accelerate what it can be doing. So it's the ecosystem that is needed. So fantastic. And it truly, going back to ecosystem, it tells us that these things are only going to get faster, better, and sooner.
Man, I wish I would have bought more. Actually, I wish I would have bought at all NVIDIA stock 10 years ago, or 5 years ago, or 2 years ago.
So last year, December, it was $152, right? Today is $928, right? So we're talking about almost 10x, flowing. It's incredible, right?
Hey, a couple of weeks ago it was in the 700s. So it's still going up.
Yeah.
So one thing that was really interesting about some of the announcements, so these are platforms, right? So they're building platforms. These aren't really just like the chip itself. It's like the whole ecosystem that they're building around these chips and how fast they run and so on and so forth. But they also announced something called Project Groot, which is GR00T.
What's with these names? Groot, Grout, GPT, Pi. The only one I like is Claude. Seriously, Claude speaks to me. So what's Project Group? Groot.
So there we go. We can't even say it. So it's essentially what it does. It builds a platform so you can run inference for robotics. And now they're entering the robotics space. We're seeing a lot of advancements in here, and probably we'll do another episode on AI-powered humanoid machines that we're seeing every day. And there's a couple of them right now that are very, very interesting. A lot of them powered by some of the OpenAI models. But in order to run these things, to run the subsystems of these, you need a lot of these powerful models that are doing not just the reasoning, but also the controlling. And these are millisecond type of decisions that needs to be done. So it's not like text, right, where you're generating text and it's okay if you wait a few seconds to generate that text. These needs to happen almost in real time. And that's where the advancements on this underlying hardware is becoming really, really important for these types of applications. We'll do another show on that for sure.
Yeah, that's actually a really good one. We should do a generative AI LLMs application to mechanics and robotics, but to basically center the attention of everybody. If you ask someone like Artisan I, where does AI or advanced analytics is going to lead, and that was 10 years ago, we would tell you it's automation and robotics, right? But some of the tasks that came out in the past 2 years, many of us didn't think. For example, write me a Python code that connects this data source with this data source, and it actually does the analysis, right? So all of a sudden, the tasks that LLMs are able to produce are so interesting, but it moves forward in a place that robotics hasn't made progress in 10 years. What does that mean? You can teach an algo really quickly how to play chess, right? But teach an algo to grab a pencil. So now you have a mechanical arm and he's actually grabbing a pencil. It's been very difficult for the advancement of robotics to do these humanoid type of things. But God forbid, give me the best allocation of how do I get this pencil to move 17 times so it fits that hole. That's not a problem. That's non-trivial. But in a way, it's a proportionally reverse logic from how we as humans grow, right? It's very difficult for a kid to learn how to play chess. ask a kid to grab a spoon, by month 3 or 4, they're doing it.
Exactly.
Like 6, they're doing it, right? So that's the unlock. And this is where we're going to start seeing applications of LLMs coming into robotics.
Yeah, and that's exactly what Jensen Huang said, right? He basically said building foundation models for general humanoid robots is one of the most exciting problems to solve in AI today. And it will enable these technologies to come together to kind of lead the robotics around the world, to take like this giant leap forward in the general robotics area. And what they're talking about in this case with GROOT, or GR00T, which stands for Generalist Robot 00 technology, it's actually specifically designed to understand natural language and emulate movements by observing human actions. Now imagine that. Just like the baby you're talking about, right? It's learning from observing other people around it and the environment. So it's amazing, the compute power and what we're going to see over the next couple of years here for sure.
Artists, jam-packed episode with news. Everybody, I hope you're enjoying a bit of our synthesizations of the advancements of AI, our takes. 2 things that we want to keep you updated on is please continue to give us feedback, register, subscribe. We're here to collaborate with you.
Hit that follow button.
Hit that follow button. We're making progress, but we, like AI, we want to operate at a different pace. And we are very excited to basically showcase that we're going to be introducing interviews and kind of guests, quick and dirty takes that complement artists' amazing view and my obscure view of AI.
Amazing view, the excellent view, JC.
It's all about making this conversation interesting, relevant, and timely to all of you guys. Artists, you want to send us off?
Yeah, well, this was fun. We added a lot of our own commentary, so hope you guys enjoy this. Hit that follow button and rate us on wherever you listen to this podcast. Till next time, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Generation AI is part of the Enrollify podcast network. If you like this podcast, chances are you're going to like other Enrollify shows too. Our podcast network is growing weekly, and we've got a wide range of marketing, enrollment, and higher ed technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks, all designed to empower you to be a better higher ed professional. Our shows help higher ed leaders and professionals like you find their next big idea. They feature a selection of the industry's best as your hosts, like Jamie Hunt, Seth Odell, Jenny Lee Fowler, Brian Gross, and many of your favorite leaders in higher ed. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the next generation AI student engagement platform that's helping institutions all over the country create meaningful, personalized, and engaging connections with their prospects and students. Learn more at element451.com.